Hello Internet, Jojo here. Today, we get to talk about and throw some math around in an attempt to calculate the power of the soon-to-be greatest swordsman in the world, Roronoa Zoro. Now, in this video, we will be calculating all of Zoro's most relevant pre-time skip feats of power. We're only doing pre-time skip in this video because, well, I'm not sure that I could put myself through another 45-minute long video. And I don't want to do it to you guys. So, this makes it more convenient for everyone. Also, it'll be a lot easier to enjoy. That said, grab your bandana and your legendary sword as we cut through the fog of misinformation and headcanon to calculate the best feats of Roronoa Zoro. Now, to get this ball rolling, I feel like we should start from the very beginning of the series and follow the natural timeline of the story. And don't worry, feats from early One Piece are not going to be boring. Trust me. So, the first feat that we're going to calculate takes place very early in the series, after Zoro gets stabbed by Buggy. After he got stabbed, Zoro was recovering with a quick nap in this building when Buggy then blasted it with one of his special Buggy balls. This is the same type of Buggy ball that would later blow up this building. Taking Buggy's height in comparison to this window, we find this explosion is about 119 meters in diameter. That is larger than a football field of pure explosion. An airburst explosion of that size would be worth about 750 tons of TNT. And the thing is, this explosion just woke Zoro up more than anything else. Seriously. Before the Straw Hats even got a navigator, Zoro was casually getting woken up by an attack that would vaporize 1,000 people. Nice. Now, let's blow this pathetic explosion out of the water with this next feat. When One Piece was first airing, there was an OVA that Oda praised. This OVA did not have the same animation or even same voice actors, but I wanted to talk about it because there's a feat in here that's really cool. This OVA came out between episode 8 and 9 of the anime, making it a super early and super powerful feat. This OVA starts off with Luffy, Nami, and Zoro getting hit by a gigantic cannon shell. They all survived and are left without a scratch. But later, we get a better look at this cannon's effect. And what's that? Did this cannon shell cause the clouds to move? Yes, it did. Guys, I love cloud bursting feats. They seem so simple and are often overlooked, but yield insane power. They're great. Anyways, there is very little to use as a ruler for this feat, but we can assume that this cannon is equal to the average height of a skyscraper, about 247 meters. Using that, we find these clouds have a diameter of 1,831 meters and a thickness of 210 meters. This would yield a volume of 553 million cubic meters and a mass of 554.6 million kilograms. These clouds moved a radius of about 915 meters in 0.68 seconds, putting it at about 3,012 miles per hour, or just under Mach 4. Accounting for acceleration, and this cannon must have had a kinetic energy of 230 kilotons of TNT. Within 9 episodes, Zoro went from overpowering several marines at one time to tanking hits that are 15 times more powerful than the little boy nuclear bomb. Now, here's a question. Is this feat usable in a debate? No, not in isolation. This is too far outside what I am comfortable using without having any cannon feats to support it. Luckily, we have a massive cannon, or I guess massive bomb feat, that supports this level of power, but we'll get to that in a minute. Before that, I want to mention something real quick. Zoro, while stupidly strong, will rarely show many feats of actual power. This is because he is a precision-based fighter. He is strong because he can cut anything. So because of this, many of his greatest feats will be cutting characters who are known to have survived a lot, or maybe even scaling to his own durability. Things like that. It makes sense, right? Next up is from Whiskey Peak. During this arc, Zoro was able to beat 100 bounty hunters and their leader at the time, Igaram. I think you can see where this is going. Igaram survived being in the middle of this explosion. It has been debated whether or not he actually took the explosion in its entirety, but there's no reason to assume that he did not take it. Igaram was acting as a decoy. The fake decoys he built were clearly destroyed. There is not enough time for him to have escaped the blast. We are never told that he escaped the blast, and it would have been far more of a disadvantage to Robin if she did not kill him. After all, she was playing both sides. We also know that Pell has tanked similar explosions and survived with minimal damage as well. Now that we have established that Igaram took this explosion, we need to find exactly how much this explosion is worth. Geologists tend to agree that to be an actual mountain, an elevation must be 1,000 feet tall, or roughly 300 meters tall. As these cactus rocks are considered mountains and are dome-shaped, their diameter should be twice the radius, or about 600 meters. Overlaying these screenshots as the clouds get in the way, and taking the cactus rock's 600 meter diameter as a ruler, we find this explosion is about 26,324 meters in diameter, or about 13.1 kilometers in radius. This bomb's fireball would be 1,222 times larger than Vatican City, the smallest country in the world, and that's just the fireball. An explosion this large would have an energy of 1,525 megatons of TNT. That is over 1,475 megatons more powerful than the most powerful ever deployed hydrogen bomb. This is a massive amount more powerful than the bomb that Crocodile was going to use in Alabasta. I can only assume that he did not want to completely level the plateau, so he held back on the bomb a little bit. Also, it's worth mentioning that Igaram took serious damage from Mr. 5, who both Zoro and Luffy one-shot. So Zoro is definitely able to match this level of power. Yet, even this is pretty much tame when compared to the next feat that we're going to talk about. This next feat is not one that you might realize is an actual feat, but it's insane, and I wanted to talk about it. So, remember the Monkey Bros that salvaged the sunken ships? They were relevant right before the Skypiea arc, so it's okay if you don't remember them. What you do need to remember is that Mashra was capable of blowing air into this completely sunken ship with his lungs alone. In the open ocean, the sea is about 3,688 meters deep, and that depth would have a pressure of 5,369 psi. Comparing this ship to the Going Merry, and assume that its radius is the radius of the air that Mashra is blowing, and we can find that it has a surface area of about 123 million square inches. Comparing the surface area to the pressure pushing down on this, and Mashra's lungs could yield a force of 662 billion pounds of force. Displacing this force by the radius of the ship and assumed bubble, and we get an energy of 56 kilotons of TNT, and is generated by his lungs alone. But that's not the only reason it's impressive. Generally, a normal human breath moves about 1.3 meters per second. Assuming a full lung of air, 6 liters or 7.35 grams, we get a kinetic energy of 0.00621 joules. This means that Mashra is about 15 quintillion times stronger than a normal human. Multiplying that by the typical energy for a human punch, 400 joules, and we find that Mashra should be able to punch with about 3.6 gigatons of TNT. And the crew one-shot him. In fact, they probably could have done it alone, but it just happened to be all three of them at the same time. This is already much more than Igaram survived, and would make Bellamy a lot more imposing. Also, let's not forget that directly after this, the crew survives getting chomped by a massive turtle, but that feat was then overshadowed by the shadows of the Shandorans looming over them. So everyone does tend to forget that. This level of power does actually directly confirm the knockup stream, which we have calculated to be in the hundreds of gigatons of TNT. So just know that One Piece has actually very, very consistent feats. I mean, so far we've gone from the tons of TNT, kilotons of TNT, extreme high megatons, low gigatons, and then high gigatons. One Piece is consistent, and we'll see this even more the farther we go. Now, an issue that Zoro and other characters have is they're not the main character. It is Luffy that gets all the powerful feats, and Zoro and Sanji are stuck with having to be scaled to him. The feat that we're scaling to him now is when Luffy hit Enel with the golden ball. I briefly mentioned it in one of these cards during my Luffy video, but that was a back of the napkin calculation, more of a ballpark estimate, so Now I'm going to run through it again with a bit more precision. After Luffy splits the sky, he then sets his target on Enel. Luffy then throws the golden ball at him faster than Enel can react. This proves that Luffy was moving far faster than the return stroke of a lightning bolt, as Enel has shown many times that that is how he travels and that he can move and navigate at this speed with great precision. Also, if he couldn't react at speeds near that of lightning, then every time he used his lightning speed, he would end up in outer space or on the other side of the planet. Using this panel, we find this ball weighs about 2,875,000 kilograms. For this insanely massive ball to move at lightning speeds, Luffy would be striking with about 3.324 teratons of TNT, but that is at a very minimum. In a recent video, I discussed how Death Metal found that Luffy was casually at 13 times the speed of light, and we can take what I talked about there and apply it here, just in reverse. In the anime, from the moment the scene cut to the golden ball's perspective to the moment that it hits Enel, about 0.94 seconds passed, and Enel is able to complete his thought in 0.64 seconds. Reversing these numbers, and we find this ball must have been moving at about 323 million miles per hour. This mass moving at this speed would generate about 7.17 teratons of TNT. But to be fair, this is a low estimate, as Enel is more than capable of moving at sharp angles while moving at this speed. So this ball could be moving much faster, but honestly, doesn't particularly matter for this particular feat. Personally, I'm fine with either of these numbers, as later we'll get into feats much stronger. So don't worry about that. Now there are a few other feats that Zoro has done, feats like getting kicked all the way across Water 7, punching a hole in a tsunami, but they're not nearly as impressive as the next few feats we're going to talk about. However, before we actually get to those, I definitely wanted to mention that Zoro should be much stronger than Ohm, and in Grand Adventure, Ohm did this. Zoro should also scale, in at least small part, to this glowy thing casually lifting 4 islands from the ocean in unlimited cruise. I'm sure that I'll calculate those eventually, but this video is going to be long enough. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. We talk about all sorts of cool stuff here. And don't forget to hit the like button, because that helps the video do good in the YouTube algorithms. If this video does well, then a video on post timeskip Zoro will come out much sooner. And that one is filled with a myriad of awesome feats. So make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And let's get back to the feats. Next up, we're jumping all the way to Thriller Bark and staying there for a while. When the Straw Hats went up against Oars showed that he was actually faster than characters like Nami and Usopp, who have dodged lightning, and even faster than Zoro, who minutes later would dodge a plethora of light speed attacks from Kuma. Now, I previously calculated this feat, but it didn't quite have the satisfying result that I hoped for. After all, this is by far the most absurd light speed feat that we have seen in this series. And, I've learned oceans more since then, so we're going to recalculate it. To start off, we have to prove that these are in fact light speed projectiles. And we know they are for a multitude of reasons. First is because of show don't tell. This is something that writers do to remove unnecessary dialogue and replace it with visuals. So, when a character and author come out and tell us something like this, we can assume that this is what the author wants the audience to know. In this case, Kuma says the air is being deflected at light speed. The second reason we know that this is a light speed attack is because many times we have seen Kuma push things way heavier than air, far faster than characters who have dodged lightning could see. Third is that Kuma is able to push pain, and pain's an idea, a sensation, a non-corporeal thing. You see, in One Piece, there are really only 2 types of devil fruits. Devil fruits that conform to reality, and reality warping. Reality conforming devil fruits are fruits that still follow the rules of what is considered real. Kizaru is light. His lasers cannot be faster or slower than light speed. For that to happen, it would be a fundamental change in the nature of his devil fruit. His power conforms to reality. However, there is reality warping devil fruits. Law's fruit, Boa's fruit, Big Mom's fruit, and Kuma's. Kuma's fruit allows him to push things like exhaustion. Exhaustion comes from a usage of energy, meaning that Luffy is empty of energy, but Kuma pushes it out. Effectively, Kuma pushed the emptiness out of something that was already empty, leaving the empty thing full, but making the emptiness tangible that it can be felt by someone else. This is literally impossible. So with reality warping like that, and the fact that Oda is explicitly telling us that it is light speed, the fact that Luffy has dodged light speed radiation from Foxy, Luffy punched Enel, and Zoro dodged Kuma's laser after it was fired, light speed is effectively proven for this particular feat. So with this, as well as a myriad of other new scenes, we can justify calculating Zoro's speed from the anime. Now, from the moment that we switch the pause perspective to the moment that the pause reaches Zoro is about 2.40 seconds. Zoro shows that he is capable of moving and reacting in about 0.27 of those seconds. Dividing this 0.27 by 2.4, and we find that Zoro is capable of moving at about 8.8 times faster than light. There is a good chance this is Zoro's max pre-time skip speed, as he is clearly exerting a lot of effort. Now, for this hit in particular, we can see that Oars put all his weight into it as he's not even touching the ground. This means that we can rightly assume that he is throwing his entire weight at speeds faster than Zoro can move. Oars weighs 102 tons, so for him to launch his entire weight at 8.8 times speed light, he would be hitting Zoro with about 89.95 teratons of TNT. However, if we assume that Oars was twice as fast as Zoro, as he is capable of consistently dodging attacks from the Straw Hats, Zoro would be on the receiving end of 359.81 teratons of TNT. Remember what I said before about how consistent One Piece feats are? Well, they are very consistent. Now, this feat is absolute nuts, but not as nuts as Kuma's Ursus shock. Right after the Straw Hats take down Moria, Kuma shows up and compresses air, causing it to explode when he releases it. Now, this explosion caught all the Straw Hats and members of the Thriller Bark Victim Association in it, including Zoro. In fact, Zoro and Sanji were the only two left standing after the explosion ended. This explosion is quite a bit different, as it's not an actual explosion, but there are some things we can look at to get a general sense of its power. This same attack was able to seriously hurt Oars Jr. during Marineford. Oars Jr. is stated to be a descendant of Oars the Continent Puller, this guy, but Oars Jr. was actually trained as a pirate on Whitebeard's crew, so he is likely as strong or stronger than the original. Now, the Oars the Straw Hats fought should be significantly stronger than he was before, as Hogback did significant modifications on his body to make him stronger. Previously, we calculated that for the original Oars to even move what is considered an island, Alabasta, he must be capable of pulling with a minimum of 259 petatons of TNT. Because of that, we can assume that this Ursus shock must at least be that powerful. This means that the entire crew tanked about 259 petatons of TNT, and Zoro was capable of tanking that, then landing a hit on and damaging Kuma, who was undamaged by the same explosion. This means that Zoro must be capable of striking with a minimum of 259 petatons of TNT as well. This is very comparable to Luffy, who has also damaged characters this strong. However, we're not done with Thriller Bark yet. After this explosion happened, Zoro sacrificed himself in Luffy's place. Kuma then pushed all the pain, exhaustion, and damage out of Luffy and gave Zoro a little taste of it. After that, Zoro took all of it. This is a weird one because almost none of the attacks actually dealt any damage to Luffy, because he's rubber. However, considering the effect it had on Zoro, it had to do something. So, is this a feat of durability or endurance? Well, I think it's a bit of both, but mostly endurance. You see, while blunt force does not actually deal damage to Luffy, he still feels the pain. Every time he took a gigantic attack from Moria, he felt the pain of that attack. So, how much pain, measured in TNT, did Luffy take? First, we're going to start with Nightmare Luffy. In this form, Luffy basically expanded unnaturally. If this had happened to anyone else except Moria, as he can change his shape, they would have exploded into a puddle of blood. Imagine the pain of having your body inflated from the inside out. Second, Nightmare Luffy was at least 2 times stronger than ores and should be capable of generating about 518 petatons at minimum. However, then Moria summoned all the shadows on the island to himself, stuffing him with over 1,000 shadows. This made Moria 10 times stronger than Nightmare Luffy, who had 100 shadows, or 20 times stronger than ores. Luffy tanks at least one major hit from Moria while in this form, and we can assume that Moria was going all out as he went into this form in the first place. He didn't seem too concerned with its effect on the island and was getting very desperate. So, Luffy should have taken a minimum of 5,180 petatons of TNT's worth of pain. This means that Zoro felt the equivalent of hundreds or thousands of nuclear bombs worth of pain. Honestly, can you imagine feeling something like this and not dying? The center of a nuclear blast is hotter than the sun and is so powerful that it vaporizes people so quickly that it leaves a shadow behind. Not to mention that there is a point where a human body would rather die, regardless of an individual's will, than take any more pain. This is insane. However, it's unlikely that Zoro could actually take this much actual damage at this point in the series. But considering that he had the willpower and ambition to survive, this should scale to his haki when he gets it. After all, there is a reason he specializes in armament haki. Now, whether or not he can strike with that much power, well, we have no evidence to suggest either way, as Zoro's haki has never actually been shown to be overpowered like Luffy's has.
Let's begin with
Okay, so the last feat that I want to talk about is from Strong World. This is another one that Zoro didn't do, but that Luffy did. This is also a recalculation as, well, in all honesty, I have learned oceans more since I calculated this in a previous video. That's actually how it tends to go. I calculate something, but then months later I learn something or find a new method that will help this be more accurate. That's why recalculations are a thing. At the climax of the film, Luffy throws one final attack at Shiki the Golden Lion. Shiki attempts to use his powers to stop him, remember this, but Luffy blasts through. Luffy's hit lands on the floating island and ends up completely pulverizing it, knocking out Shiki and causing the smaller islands to fall to the water below. From this image, we can see that there's a mountain on top. Previously, I did a comparative calculation, but this time, I went straight to pixel measurements. This mountain is likely based off Mount Fuji as it has a flat top, is easily one of the most famous mountains in Japan. Shiki's entire fortress has a major Japanese theme, and this is a manga. Every mountain that looks like it's based off Mount Fuji is going to be based off Mount Fuji. It's just how it works. Kind of like how every New York looking city is going to be based off New York. So, tracing the outline of the mountain, we can compare its height to the rest of the island. Using these numbers, we find this island is about 25.778 kilometers wide. Then, taking the rest of these numbers, we can get a total volume of 54.06 trillion cubic meters. Using a granite density of 2,700 kilograms per cubic meter, and we get a weight of 139 quintillion kilograms. Here's the first new thing that I discovered and will be applied to this feat, the gravitational binding energy. Taking its mass and max diameter, we get a gravitational binding energy of 30 quintillion joules or 7.2 gigatons of TNT. Okay, simple and to the point. Now, applying the pulverization value for granite, 250 joules per cubic centimeter, and adding the energy to overpower the gravitational binding energy, we get a total energy of 3,237 gigatons of TNT, or about 3.2 teratons. This is actually a tad bit less than when Luffy hit Enel with the golden ball. But that's not all there is to talk about here. Remember how I said that Shiki tried to use his powers to try and stop Luffy? There are 2 times that he shows casual use of insane power. In the middle of the fight, Shiki decided to move the entire island. Taking these scenes and the size of the island, we find that it moved about 13 kilometers in 4.77 seconds. This would put it moving at 2,700 meters per second and would require about 125 teratons of TNT to move. Considering that Shiki does this casually and Luffy was capable of forcing him to get serious, even to the point of reminding him of Golden Roger, Luffy should be comparable to this level of power as well. However, a far greater feat from Shiki is when he used his powers to keep the island in the sky for years without effort. So how much power is Shiki producing at any given time to keep this island floating? Well, taking its diameter and weight, we find this island has a terminal velocity of 107,000 meters per second. Taking the island's weight, it and we find this island will have a kinetic energy of 193 petatons of TNT. And that is what Shiki can do casually. This is also incredibly consistent, as Shiki should be far stronger than Oars, as Shiki was on the Rocks crew. Man, I love it when vastly different feats support other feats that are vastly different. To be honest, I could see Shiki in his prime being able to match Gold Roger if he went all out. Just imagine him throwing islands the size of Marvel around at speeds near that of lightning, which we know he can react to. It would be glorious and incredibly destructive. This movie took place between Thriller Bark and the Sabaody Archipelago, and Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy are all treated as equals in their fight against the pacifistas, leaving us capable of scaling them to this level of power as well. So with that, we have covered every major pre-time skip feat by Roronoa Zoro, and some other characters. Zoro's feats really only get more powerful as we head into the post-time skip. We have a lot of good feats and powers to discuss, especially when we get into some of the games, but that will have to wait until next time. Sorry guys, but I'm not going to put myself and you guys through a 45-minute video again. So, until next time, thank you for watching. Remember to stay spectacular. Jojo, out.
Drink up me hearty Joe.